Hey guys, welcome back to Owl003. The best remote viewing you're ever going to see is right here on Owl003. Please like, subscribe, and share the content if you like the work that I'm doing. And please buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com. If you support the channel, it's helpful. And the link is in the description. So, today we are talking about feedback. Is feedback fundamental to the process of remote viewing? Now, I recently saw Ed do an interview at May, which brought this to mind, which Ed is a very smart guy, but he brought up this topic, so let's talk about it. So what is feedback in remote viewing? Okay, so feedback is, let's say the target is a pyramid, one of the pyramids in Giza, okay? And the remote viewer sits down at their desk, and they do their remote viewing. They pick up on a peaked, pointed structure, sandy textures, heat, all that. Does some sketches. Let's say this is a teaching situation, okay? You're in class. So you're done, you end the session, and then the instructor would then take out a picture of the pyramid, say this was your target. You got this, you got that, you got this. So the feedback in this situation, let's say, is a picture, like an outside picture of a pyramid. That's the feedback. Now, the remote viewer did get like angles and sketches and stuff, but he also got stuff that was inside. He describes hieroglyphics. He describes like a tomb or, narrow passages and all this and that. But that was not part of his feedback. So you often hear in remote viewing referred to as a feedback loop, okay? And the idea behind this is that you're closing this loop once you get this feedback, which to me, and I can only go by because none of us really know, guys. Everybody wants to pin this down, and they'll argue to the deaths about the details of this, but nobody really knows. Okay, so, but from my perspective, the feedback loop to me is it acts more like an effect from the process of remote viewing, because you end up looking into the target or whatever the case may be. But there are some that believe this is absolutely fundamental to the process of remote viewing, having feedback, having this picture shown to the viewer so they could then remote view it, come back around. So that's the idea behind that. Because in a training scenario, a lot of times you'll get feedback, okay, like that. Now, so right away you got this viewer is picking up stuff that's not part of his feedback. Okay, so how is he doing that if feedback is directly correlated to this? Now, in a perfect setting, in a scientific setting, in a experimental framework, this is ideal. This is ideal. But operationally, you just don't get that. Now, if you don't have this, does that mean it doesn't work? Let's talk about that. So, let's say, let's keep that up there. Let's say the target was, again, one of the pyramids of Giza. But instead of the target being tasked as the Pyramid of Giza today, the task is one of the pyramids of Giza back when it's being built. And that viewer describes the same basic elements: sandy, hot, rocky, But then he's getting all this other stuff, like, oh my god, there's like these UFOs like using sound to move these bricks around or whatever, you know what I mean? So this is the situation the viewer is describing, okay? Now, like, this is just a example, okay? So he's describing this UFOs moving all these bricks around and all this stuff. He gets the feedback back. What the now in this case, he's getting back. Okay, he's getting the tasking back. He's not actually getting genuine feedback. Okay, this would not be considered really genuine feedback. It's got partial feedback to it. This is related to something that we do know exists. Okay, but it still has this unknown component. All right. So So some would argue that, well, then this is all nonsense because there's no feedback to that. Well, let me give you another example. You're doing an operational target, okay, for someone. You don't know what it is, like always. Let's say this is because if you do like corporate stuff or whatever, or even governmental stuff, whatever, you do stuff that's kind of really kind of hush-hush. As far as feedback, this is all you get. David Powell, check for $500, la 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 la. That's my feedback. And then project manager smiling. That's all I get. Okay. Now, is that feedback? I mean, not really. I mean, it's not but did whatever I was doing, was it working? It seems to be. Even though I don't know what I'm necessarily doing, I mean, I have some idea what the target is, but I never get feedback on the situation. These people seem happy. So, remote viewers do want feedback. They do. And in most cases, as soon as they get out of training, they start going into the unknowns, and there really is a lot of it. The time they don't get feedback, they take a tasking as a feedback. All right. So the question is the feedback fundamental to the process? Well, it's certainly valuable in training. There's no doubt about that. Operationally, it doesn't seem to be. I mean, they pay me, so I'm assuming it's working. So it doesn't seem to be fundamental. The problem is, though, is when you get into also too, when you do, like, say you do stuff out of the country or whatever, you may not, or you may get very little feedback, or it may come way later. So I personally make it kind of a thing with my intention where I don't want feedback to get involved in my tasking, meaning or not feedback, but like the loop. I try not to subscribe to the loop. So because then you get into like weird things like causality, like who actually, when did the remote viewing actually start, and this and that, and time gets very strange in remote viewing. I don't want to ramble too much. Okay, so I was checking my notes here. So another thing you may have is you may get back, let's say you're doing a sports game, remote viewing. You're remote viewed a football game, and Bears win, and then if the game happens, the feedback happens, or you get the feedback is the game, and the Bears lose. So what actually is the feedback? You have a situation where a game was remote viewed, but it was remote viewed wrong. You got the feedback and it still didn't work. Okay? So, but you still remote viewed a game. So you went to what would seemingly be the right target, but this can happen. You know what I'm saying? So it's a slippery situation when it comes to feedback. You may be remote viewing partial feedback. You may be remote viewing, part of the actual target. It may be a little bit of both. We really don't know. Okay? But is it fundamental? It doesn't seem to be. Does that mean I could prove that, these, Cordy and all these UFOs and all this crap? I mean, no, you can't prove that. But there are other ways to prove it by calling stuff at the target that is not part of your feedback, or not giving the remote viewer feedback, and the tasker sees that, that's provable. You could prove that. So another thing that I mentioned, there was a study, 600 viewers, and only 1% of the viewers were remote viewing at this high potential. And he makes mention of the students that Ingo had trained, weren't successful. All right. Now, they weren't as good as Ed and Angela, Angela and Joe. That's true. But you can't blame CRV for that. One thing you should understand is when you're sitting in the seat as a psychic remote viewer, you're sitting across from a scientist or whatever, and you're kind of a guinea pig for these guys, you're going to have a different perspective. Even Ed mentions that him and Joe don't get along a lot, or whatever. They don't come to terms on some things about remote viewing. So, and just so you know, a lot of these things that I mentioned, not necessarily this, but it's not that other people don't know this stuff that I talk about. It's just a lot of the stuff I talk about, they don't have the balls to talk about it. So it's not necessarily a lack of knowledge. It's something else. So anyway, the study, back to the study, yeah, a lot of these guys, in the unit, they just weren't good remote viewers. You know what I mean? It wasn't CRV's fault. So again, you get wrapped up, I don't mean to get off track here, but people get wrapped up in these methodologies. I've seen it's not about that, guys. I've seen these visual-based methodologies see the wrong crap too. So it's not about that. I could have learned any method, and I would have been good at this probably. Any known method that's decent. So that's something to consider with feedback. So there are still unknowns to this. But is it fundamental to the process? I don't believe so. Does that mean we should jump all in on these remote viewings with UFOs and in the past? No, absolutely not. We need to throw that data on the pile, and keep track of it until we know. Now you have some, like, or Farsight, the Courtney, like, this is it. This is real. My remote viewers viewed it, and this is what. And I remote view the same stuff, but by claiming that is what's happening, that's not science, and it's irresponsible to do that. So a lot of this stuff I don't know, but as far as proving if the feedback is fundamental to the process working, I would say I don't believe that it is, and these are the reasons why. So. But I'm sure other people could refute that. So I'm not trying to, with their own reasons. I'd love to hear why. But just something to consider, guys. So, because I know students jump right into esoteric targets as soon as they can. You have to be skeptical with that stuff. I mean, I'm not saying don't do it, but anybody that buys into all their own targets that they're doing, like they just, there's no feedback for them, you're building on a staircase that's kind of there's nothing there. So be responsible with your remote viewing. If you can get feedback, great. If there's an unknown component, try and tether that target to as much reality that you can. So that's about it. Like I said, if you guys like the channel, please subscribe, please share the content, and buy me a coffee on buymeacoffee.com, and we'll catch you next time on Owl003.